every time you try and make a prediction about where technology is going to go, you're wrong. So
welcome back to another episode of RecTalk. I'm your host, Nitin Sharma, founder of RecTools.io, the only whole-of-market directory of your recruitment supply chain. Head to RecTools.io if you're looking for a new supplier for your recruitment agency. My guest today is James Fairclough, who is founder of Loupe Testware and a former podcast guest from our pilot episode you might remember him from, and he's a good pal of mine as well. And we're going to be really dissecting kind of the last 18 months. So, the last time you were on the show, things were very different, and so was the tech landscape. AI had become a mainstream conversation. So we just wanted to I wanted to get your thoughts on really outside of the recruitment space, what's actually happening, because our industry is the slowest moving one to kind of uptake new tech. So appreciate you giving us your time, mate, and thanks for coming on.
glad to be here. Glad to be back. Where do you want to start? I think we were talking just before, and I guess my broad brush take on where we are with AI since we last caught up is we've had a lot more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
Many more language models are present, and I think many more of the kind of early capabilities of ChatGPT have been replicated in another solution. It seems like one of the big changes is the number of technologies that are built on top of existing language models.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even in the kind of high technology space, I think we've seen kind of marginal improvements. I think even with the, evolutionary kind of training that, GPT's gone through.
Yeah, that's
kind of
probably
marginal kind of improvements in uses.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think it's an interesting one because actually I watched back the episode that we did on the pilot, and the lack of understanding on what AI was by one of my previous co-hosts was just phenomenal, right? And so kind of what I've noticed in the recruitment landscape is that there are multiple use cases for automation and AI. However, there's also the common misconception that AI is automation, and they're obviously two very separate things, which you articulated really well in that episode. But so if I give you an idea of kind of what's happening within the recruitment sector at the minute, it really seems to be that ChatGPT, OpenAI, and a handful of other LLMs are being put into existing things like CRMs and job board distribution tools and that kind of thing to help people put together a quicker job spec, or to run a search on a database looking for keywords, because you no longer need to tag against keywords because the language model can just read through reams and reams of data and throw back these people look relevant. That to you don't see that as sort of an advancement in use case then?
I think
because outside of the industry, I'm assuming that there's a lot more, like it's a lot further ahead.
Yeah. The interesting thing about what happened there is, because I know that you've been able to make really good use of GPTs to produce tools.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really where we've seen big improvements, is in the consumerization of language models.
So GPT wrappers, here's what it does, very basic use case.
That's really been the big difference over the last 18 months is how easily people are able to adopt it for jobs that it is good at. But I kind of liken the hype around AI at the moment a little bit like the NFT bubble, which is that there are some really kind of good principles in there, but it's not necessarily mandatory to utilize that technology to achieve those outcomes. So,
so give us an example of what you're thinking in terms of your trail of thought there.
I mean, if you kind of take the NFT use case, that's really about proof of ownership. There are lots of other ways to implement proof of ownership in technology, cryptographically. And the same is true for some of the solutions that you guys have built with GPTs. So you can build a solution which passes a lot of data and makes decisions based on a stored set of parameters, which is effectively what's happening there. But 18 months ago, you probably wouldn't have been able to do that without an established development team.
Yeah.
The real difference now is that because that technology is independently so powerful, somebody without a development team can go and produce usable tools.
So obviously you've got a bunch of people who can leverage GPTs as an example, right? And can make low code, no code solutions to a problem within their business or within their marketplace. Have you seen a jump then in ability and capability within the tech space on the developer side then? Have they had to step up, do more things? Are there advancements or things going on within that space that we don't know about as a consumer, on a consumer level? Do you know what I mean? Let's unpick that, because there's obviously a lot of stuff going on that we don't know about.
Yeah, there are. You have to kind of imagine that most software developers are going to be pretty pro emerging technology. So kind of even a little bit prior to the advent of ChatGPT, there were some pretty sophisticated coding copilots emerging, which would assist you in kind of like writing the programs. And you then have some interesting sort of thought experiments around, or how long will it be until that engineer that writes those prompts to develop the code is no longer required.
Yeah.
And it can be kind of completely consumerized. And I think that what's happening in the development of technology with the kind of partnership and assistance of language models, and what's happening in the consumer side of language models, like writing the GPTs, those two things are eventually going to collide potentially. And you do start to question whether we're going to have completely autonomously generated programs, and whether there'll be less of a need for developers. I think that's the big concern that everyone's got. I tend to think that it might start a bit of a divide in the production of technology, where you'll have some more artisanal technology, which is developed by humans, and more kind of, generic boilerplate technology developed predominantly by language models.
Yeah. I think it entirely depends on what the need is, right, for that tech. Because you can build a factory that mass produces and paints cars a lot quicker than like hand spray car can be painted, right, and by hand. But at the same time, there are use cases and there are specific scenarios where you're like, no, only somebody who knows what they're doing, a skilled craftsman will be able to do this and produce this. And so do you feel with that kind of model then, my take on it is that I think then what we may be heading into is the code and the development of technology that is by human, like a skilled person, will ramp up the cost of that. Do you know what I mean? Because GPT or any other language model can mass produce software, but if there's a very specific thing that you need doing and delivering, well then you got to go to an expert. And there's an opportunity there, I suppose, to be like, oh yeah, if that's what you want, then you're going to pay for that.
Yeah, I think potentially. I mean, we've seen that happen in the kind of technology development industry with kind of niche old programming languages or frameworks, which have fallen out of favor over years.
Right.
And, there's kind of like a reverse bell curve where as the technology falls out of favor, more developers move onto newer, kind of frameworks, for example. And the price for certain technologies kind of falls off a bit of a cliff. But when the companies that haven't been able to move off that technology still need somebody to support it later down the line, those skills start to get quite expensive again. And we're seeing that with stuff like COBOL, for example, now.
Yeah. So supply and demand kicks in then. Okay, fair. So let's move on to kind of automation for a second then. So AI to a side, how automation within our sector at the minute is purely process based, right? If you think from a recruitment standpoint, automating the flow of candidate applications through your business and into the laps or the inboxes of the most relevant consultants, that's probably the most obvious use case that is currently being implemented and so on. Outside of our recruitment sector, where is automation really making waves? What kind of things can we be looking forward to as an industry to be like, oh, right, okay, that's interesting?
I'm not really sure. Every time you try and make a prediction about where technology is going to go, you're wrong. So anything that we guess
less
now
about
is less
where
likely
is it
to
going to
be.
go, but more about where is it now. Because I think what tends to happen often in the recruitment sector is that we are so blindsided by kind of what we think is fascinating and amazing outside of our sector. You know, it's sort of like, you know, that's been done for years. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you were talking about large language models and about what ChatGPT would be able to do 18 months ago on our pilot episode. And at that time, our minds were blown, like, fucking hell, really? It can do that, it can do this. And for you, it was sort of like, of course it can. Jesus, it's been doing it for ages. You didn't know about it. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying is, so what is it? What level of automation is out there at the minute in other sectors and other industries that we can look forward to as a recruitment sector?
I think that's kind of a difficult one because we're comparing it to an enormous leap in the consumerization of, AI. I think one thing that's clearly happened is with the advent of GPT and some of the other kind of like major language models out there and the, layers on top that make it friendly to build on top of and all that sort of stuff, it's been embraced really, really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of what you're looking at in the recruitment sector probably doesn't really represent a very slow adoption of that technology. I think you guys have kind of jumped on it quite quickly. I think the sort of prevailing direction is around automated decision making. So a lot of what you'll see at the moment is, kind of recommendation or analysis on a broad set of, in your case, maybe candidates or CVs or job specifications or whatever it might be to kind of narrow it down for you to make a decision. And I think the next advent will probably be an intelligent decision-making process where, those decisions can be made for you based on
parameters that you push in.
Yeah, preferences. And, an example that I happen to know is going on currently was, kind of really starting to bear fruit would be in like the insurance sector. So in underwriting and decision-making in insurance based on huge data sets, is slowly beginning to be automated.
Okay. So decisions on things like claims and information coming in, or is that more on the price of the insurance as an example?
If you think about some of the insurance markets, it could be whether to insure a given activity or business or whatever it may be.
Okay.
Or to what level to insure.
So you're looking at risk underwriting and that kind of thing. So it's at underwriting level. Okay,
and traditionally those have been like really, really difficult sciences.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
I think so. To kind of put that in your.
Well, there's the ethical piece, though, isn't there, around kind of an applicant track. At the moment, there's a real thing about, does an applicant tracking system auto-reject candidates? And the answer is, by and large, no, because ethically it's not supposed to, right? Because you've got things like bias that you've got to account for with DE and I and everything else. And so it's whether or not something like that would be appropriate for a people-based industry like the recruitment sector. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I think another thing that you're probably quite likely to see is more personalized and more specialized decision making.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than using, ChatGPT's API for the same response that anybody else could get, there'll be a more sort of personalized or more kind of, commercially aware decision making process. So I'm not quite sure if that's going to represent something in the way of like a private arrangement with some of these companies where they train it on a more personal data set.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. Yeah, because one of the GPTs I've built is like a candidate validation tool, right? So you, as a recruiter, you're working on a particular job or job spec, and you can upload the job spec, upload your notes, upload anything else that you know about the client that you think would be useful, and then you put in your CVs that you're considering submitting, and it will match those, not just match the skill sets, but actually look at industry background, that kind of thing, time served, based on the notes that you've said about the client, and will give you a recommendation on, okay, submit these 5 people, Here's how they rank out of 10 in terms of their strength of application. Here's what's good about them. Here's where the development areas are. And so, yeah, I can see how or why you would then input a model like that into an application process where actually, rather than people submitting an application, sitting and waiting and being like, oh, I haven't heard back, it's been 6 weeks, it's an immediate, hey, look, thanks for your application. Actually, where you rank against some of the other applications that we've got is, 25 percentile, 5 percentile, whatever. We're still reviewing applications. These things are the things we like about your profile. These are the things that we think are missing. And therefore, give them a chance to either address that or accept that, okay, it's a no on this occasion. Because one of the biggest issues in our industry is candidate feedback. They're the biggest frustration that the candidates have with agencies and with the hiring process in general with talent acquisition teams is the lack of feedback they get. Which, automation and AI should be able to sort of solve that problem. Whether it does or not is a different story, isn't it? Mm. But you mentioned NFTs I find that one an interesting kind of comparison because, it's pretty accepted that the whole concept of NFTs is pretty gone now. It's failed.
Yeah. I think, like a lot of emerging technologies, and I'm really referencing the hype more than the technology. But, they kind of go through a difficult period where the early adopters have to make a lot of noise and a lot of excitement about the technology for it to kind of grow enough or be adopted enough to sort of survive long term for the causes that it's most applicable for. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in the short term, that means that it gets used for stuff that it's not particularly good at. So we've seen that in ChatGPT. So you can scroll LinkedIn for not very long to find somebody that thinks it does a terrible job of whatever it asked it to do. But the fact that they are kind of using it and talking about it and promoting it is ultimately going to lead to improvements, which will help it get to where it needs to be for it's most
it's a good point, isn't it? Yeah, it's like riding a lawnmower to work and being like, this is a rubbish car.
Yeah, and I think the other interesting thing that you're probably likely to see in the recruitment sector are some of the other non-kind of language model-based innovations. In the last sort of 12 months, we did something pretty cool with like voice synthesis, which is quite interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's kind of riding the same wave of kind of machine learning and artificial intelligence, but we're able to like accurately replicate our voices for use in a test that we were using at the time. Which is pretty cool. So some of the solutions that we were using were being marketed largely towards content creators. So they weren't having to film as much content. They could use
I see.
kind of a text-to-speech voiceovers that very closely replicated their voices. And you do wonder whether that kind of gets close to, responding to a candidate or, whatever, some of those kind of personal experiences that recruitment companies might now be using their time for to be kind of automated. The text to speech and speech to text thing is an interesting one because so we had Dries de Costa on from Chat Automation, and they have a conversational generative AI solution for high volume temp stuff, and we were talking about that where it was kind of like, look, do you replicate the voice of your consultant, or do you just use a generic Lucy or a John voice? Do you know what I mean? And kind of do you openly tell your candidates that are ringing in that this is AI? Do you know what I mean? At which point, why are you then replicating the voice of a consultant or or the owner of the business or something like that? Do you know what I mean? It's an interesting one because I think there's really good one like Barry White's voice.
This is what I said. This is what I said. I was like, if
nobody could let you down softer than that.
That's it. Yeah. Or if I'm speaking, if I bank with Virgin, right? I got a mortgage with them, but I bank with Virgin. I want Richard Branson answering the phone. Hey man, I'm just on my boat. Yeah. What do you want? You know what I mean? That's my take on it. It's like we could do some really cool, interesting stuff with it, right? But the use case for the voice, my concern with the text to speech and speech to text piece within recruitment is candidates are already frustrated with the lack of ability to get hold of consultants, and the biggest concern that recruiters have is that AI is coming to take their jobs. Whereas actually, really, AI and automation should be used to amplify the amount of work that they're able to do and put out, rather than remove their requirement to speak to their candidates. That's already a sort of a prevalent issue in the industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is get fobbed off by
AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's really that's a kick in the teeth, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've gone through all this time making my CV look good, answered all the questions that you've emailed me with and all the rest of it, not realizing that it was actually AI that was sending me these emails. And then I've submitted the CV and you've phoned me and I'm like, right, okay, yeah, cool. What are we thinking? Unfortunately, no, your application's a rejection. Okay, is this even? No, it's AI. Oh, brilliant. They haven't even bothered looking at me.
I guess the other side of it to worry about potentially as a recruitment company would be whether or not you were talking to a real candidate or not.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Because there's application bots out there at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, if the technology is available, this is kind of part of the thing with the current sort of wave of consumerized AI that we're going through is that it's as available to them as it is to you theoretically.
Yeah.
Or as available in the case of the voice stuff, we read some interesting stuff. It's as available to somebody with nefarious intent as it is to somebody who's trying to do something useful with it.
Yeah, that's always been the case with any tech, isn't it? Yeah, but I think that's a really interesting point. Though. Yeah, absolutely, because you've got a candidate that could just be like, well, I could write a GPT that looks for certain things and matches me up to jobs that I think I'd be good for. It can even edit my CV accordingly and present that CV and actually will fill out the boring application process that they want me to do. And so you've got AI applying for jobs and you've got AI rejecting the applications and no one has to look at do anything.
And then it all starts to feel quite silly after a while.
Yeah. But then is that the point where it all falls apart? Like, it's the NFT thing. This is the taking it back to the comparison with NFTs.
I think it's kind of like the dead internet thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Eventually, at some point, you just have AI talking to AI, and and actually to kind of tie it back into the development example, one of the interesting things is that it's obviously learning at the moment from predominantly kind of human experiences, so information that we've kind of written up academically or published online in sort of Stack Overflow articles or whatever it might be. The language models are helping us with our current programming tasks based on the experience of previous ones, and that dead internet theory does kind of kick in at some point. You do wonder, am I just getting regurgitated examples here which don't really work? Yeah,
that's it. No, that's fair. Okay, so where do you, so we're kind of 18 months into this journey since the last time we spoke about it, and it's pretty much everywhere, right? It's on your phone, it's on my phone, it's on Google now as the very first search result on most things that you search for and so on. Where do you think that this could end up or is heading then?
I think any guess I made would be wrong, but
it's fun to speculate, isn't it?
It's fun to speculate. And I guess sort of considering that we got kind of some of it right 18 months ago, if I was going to kind of forecast out a year or two from now, I think definitely kind of like the same level of commodity that you experience with ChatGPT now, where it could just be implemented into anything virtually and you can easily build on top of it. I think you're likely to see that from other solutions, be it voice, be it video. I think some of that stuff's coming quite soon. And I would keep an eye on automated decision making. I think what we're probably likely to see is, the language models and kind of other solutions get really good at collating information.
Yeah.
And I think the next wave is them doing something with that information, which is where, those sort of arbitrary automation solutions that are available to everybody at the moment, that allow you to kind of program a workflow or whatever it might be, and, respond to a LinkedIn message or, kind of converse by email or, post on a job board or whatever it might be. I think the next iteration would be language models collating a lot of information and then doing a lot of stuff with that information. And I think how we kind of react to that as, kind of both business owners and people in, as contributors within our industries will be quite interesting. Yeah,
no, that's fair. Yeah, so, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think it's an interesting one from my point of view in that we've gone through a real big naysayer, no, not going to use it, to then our supply chain implementing it into their processes and procedures, to then this massive RecTech boom of AI and automation solutions for very, very niche problems or very specific problems. And I liken it very much to the old dot-com boom, right? In literally there will be an amalgamation. Yes, there's a first market mover advantage for some, and staying on top of sort of innovation is going to be key. But I think a lot of these solutions will end up almost amalgamating and being bought by bigger businesses or people who've got better cash flow and so on and so forth to provide a better overall kind of like off-the-shelf solution. I do also think, interestingly, and I think by the time this goes out, we're probably 6 weeks from the time this goes out. But I do also think that we're on the cusp of the death of a CRM. In that you've got, did you see the news about Klarna this morning?
I heard about it a couple of days ago.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, so Klarna no longer using Workday or Salesforce, and they're going to entirely move over to automation and AI solutions in-house. And I think that's massive for the recruitment sector, given the fact that the majority of rec tech businesses are CRM providers who are investing heavily in.
Yeah, or integrators, or
that's it. Yeah. It's such a strange world, our industry, in that everybody dumps their most valuable asset, which is data, into this one central place, pays for access to that, and then has to pay for additional integrations into it. Whereas actually, it just seems a bit backward to do that, right? And so, I think I think 18 months from now, it's going to be a very different landscape in the rec tech sector. And possibly even the kind of, obviously, the wider CRM concept.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know a lot about, kind of what's going on at Klarna, but you have to imagine for them as like a, predominantly technology-based company. Yeah. They probably had, dozens and dozens of people kind of patching, supporting, and building on top of those platforms.
Yeah.
So they're weighing up, like all tech companies are at the moment, how many people they need versus kind of how much could be sort of automated or taken away by language models.
Well, if you could set up a digital worker bot to do a piece of admin, there's no reason why you can't set up a digital worker bot to take information from one place and put it into another, right? And maintain that in-house and control that in-house. And yes, it will pick up baggage along the way, and it might do things that it's not supposed to, and that's what you focus on cleaning and stopping it from doing. It's an interesting one, because again, you've got businesses like National Grid and Severn Trent Water are two perfect examples of businesses that invested heavily in SAP, and the majority of their kind of contract recruitment spend is on contractors who specialize in SAP to come and fix a problem that shouldn't be an issue, because you've spent millions implementing the CRM. So why are you now? Do you know what I mean? You shouldn't need to. I don't know.
Yeah, I think CRMs are a really good example of this kind of concept I was talking about earlier, where you might see, kind of like a divide in technology. If it's something, simple that you need for your business, a business system.
Yeah.
If AI could do a very good job of generating that, you might be quite happy for it to do that for you.
Yeah.
But if it's kind of like a core part of your product or your offering, or, you might want that to be kind of more bespoke. So, Klarna, they don't put the same, I mean, they're a big company, right? But they don't put the same kind of importance on their CRM as you would do as a small recruitment company. Your CRM would be a much bigger part of your business relative to what Klarna's CRM would be to them.
Yeah.
So I think that it may be, small recruitment companies, or even larger recruitment companies for that matter, put more emphasis on their CRM and continue with the CRM suppliers, because it's more key to their business.
Yeah, it's interesting that. Yeah. Well, time will tell, I suppose, on that. Closing thoughts? I think my knobhead of a co-host once asked you if Skynet's going to go live. It hasn't done yet.
Yeah, maybe 18 months out.
Yeah.
I think we're probably going to... I think we've seen the big evolution.
Yeah.
And I think it's obviously here to stay. There's a lot of good stuff happening. What I would really like to see over the next 18 months is some of the kind of arbitrary inclusions of AI in products that really aren't benefiting from it, or really aren't powered by AI. Starting to drop some of that. Because I think that's getting a little too cliche now.
Yeah.
Everybody's powered by AI. So I'd like to see some of that kind of go away, and some of the, kind of like really good, like practical implementations of it starting to shine through, and hopefully not replacing us all and becoming a machine overlord would be good.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah. No, I completely agree. Cool. Man, this has been fun. It's been good. Appreciate you coming on. I'll send you any questions and stuff that come through, because I'm sure there will be. And I'd love to get you back on at some point to kind of work through those.
Yeah, I'll see you in 18 months.
Yeah. Well, no, you'll see me in about a few hours at a pub. Thank you very much for listening once again. It's rectools.io for those of you who are looking for new suppliers. And it's the RecTalk podcast on all social channels for those looking for clips. We'll see you again next week.